In May 2018, we finally got details about the new Shimano XTR 12-speed group set. A couple of months later, myself and my American colleague Josh Patterson got a chance to ride the new group sets. And on BikeRadar and in the description below are some first ride reports and all the information you need about the new 12-speed group set. It has taken until May 2019 for us to finally get our hands on a group set here at BikeRadar HQ. We're in the workshop today. So we thought we'd do a little unboxing, a quick chat through what we've got, and then over the coming months I'm going to stick this on a bike and give it a proper testing in some UK conditions. One of the reasons why it's taken Shimano so long to get us this group set is that they've had some problems with the crank. And so the original crank that we saw a year ago isn't with us. However, they've created a non-series XTR compatible chain set to go with it. So let's have a quick look at that. So we've got a crank arm, it's black, and they're kind of calling like a black edition crank set. Then we have the actual drive side crank. And again, this isn't the official XTR M9100 series crank. This is a sort of non-series but 12-speed specific chain set. This has a direct mount ring and they're available in 30 to 38 tooth. So there's plenty of options out there. Now don't forget, XTR is aimed at kind of everyone now, not just your XC racers but your enduro racers as well. You do get a tool there to change the ring on the back and you'll need a spanner for that. Now, the official chain set does have a slightly different way of attaching the non-drive side arm to the drive side axle. However, this more standard series one is just the regular, you know, there's the 2 pinch bolts on there. It's the one we've seen from Shimano for years and years now, so pretty easy to use. Now, within the XTR group set, there are quite a few different permutations. Most riders will go for a 1x setup, as we have here with this 1x chain set, but there also is a 2x option with a front mech and front shifter, which we don't have. Now on the cassette side of things, there's actually 3 different options. There's an 11-speed option with a 10 to 45 tooth cassette, a 12-speed with 10 to 45 as well, and a 12-speed with a 10 to 51. Now the 51 tooth there isn't just to piss on SRAM's chips, but they say it gives better shifting across the cassette because it helps them regulate the jumps of the chain from tooth to tooth, from sprocket to sprocket, and they call this Hyperglide Plus, which is an evolution of Hyperglide. So let's have a quick look. Here we are. Clearly quite a large cassette. So 51 on the outside, 10 on the inside. The cassette, as you can see, is made from 3 different materials. We've got like a high strength, high tensile, whatever you want to call it, aluminium for the first 4 gears. Then the next 5 is titanium. And then we've got steel on the outside. Okay, doesn't weigh too much, but we will get some official weights later on. The other sort of stumbling block that Shimano have had with the 12-speed group set is with their hub. So we'll have a quick look at that. It's pretty cool in theory. Now, when we first saw the XTR hub, it was called a silence hub, and they designed basically a silent free hub mechanism. I'm not really sure why. Some people like it, some people don't like it. But anyway, it was causing them problems from what I understand. So this is a non-silence free hub. It makes a noise, but it does feel like the engagement angle is super tight on that. So I imagine it's going to be real quick to get the power down. Previously we talked about the fact that the cassette is now 10 to 51, and that is something that SRAM have been doing with their 10 to 50 for quite a while. So the issue with a 10 to 50 or 51 tooth cassette is that that 10 tooth sprocket doesn't fit on what was a regular Shimano free hub. This led SRAM to develop the XD standard, which is an open platform, which is why it's been used so widely across almost every hub on the market. Shimano finally have come up with this thing called micro spline. So as you can see, it's similar-ish to the old design, but with more of these little splines, and it's a bit shorter and a more narrow diameter. So this particular hub uses the regular J-bend spokes, and I believe there are straight pull ones available too. And of course, it uses their center lock to attach the rotors to the hubs. It's not a bad system. They're also still using cup and cone, which is something Shimano stick doggedly to. It does feel super smooth, but maintenance is maybe a little bit less simple at times, give or take a bit. Now, Shimano probably aren't known as the most sort of disruptive brand around there, like SRAM maybe are. It takes them a little bit longer to get their ideas to market. Sometimes that's great because it means they come out and they work perfectly straight away, but we'll see when we test it. But what it also means is that the XD standard was open for everyone, whereas micro spline isn't. And this means that not that many companies at the moment are offering a micro spline hub. Shimano offer it, DT Swiss offer it, and I think Chris King are going to be offering it, plus a couple of others. But it's not going to be quite as widely available as XD is. So on to almost the meat of the drivetrain, and that is the rear derailleur. So there are 3 different versions available to correspond with some of the different options you get over gearing. This one is the long cage version, SGS. And this means it works with the 10 to 45 and 10 to 51 tooth cassettes. There's also a short cage version which will only work with the 10 to 45 cassettes, but 11 or 12 speed. And there's another version for the 2x drivetrains as well. You can clearly see it's of the shadow design, so that keeps it nice and slimline, out of the way of lots of rocks. You get your usual little adjusting screws, high and low, but it looks like they've got quite a small Allen key in there, so you might have to be a bit careful, make sure you've got some nice Allen keys. And there's obviously the clutch. So this means that when you're riding one by, you're less reliant on having a chain device. So the derailleur has a couple of neat features, but not particularly exciting. The jockey wheels now have 13 teeth, which apparently makes them more efficient. Finally, the connecting pins within the parallelogram design, which apparently has been slightly refined, are now PTFE coated for longer lasting, smoother operation. Might as well have a look at the rear shifter now, because we've just gone from the rear mech. So it's a relatively standard looking shifter, nicely slimline up here. I think the previous version had a nice sort of shiny aluminium bar clamp, which I thought looked quite good. This one clearly has your 12 shifts in there. I don't think there's anything particularly wild about the shifter, but my experience of XTR shifters is that they are pretty much the best thing on the entire group set. And if I was going to build a bike from scratch and I could only say get like an XT or an SLX drivetrain on there, I would probably try and stump up for the XTR shifter because it is a wonderful feeling thing. Now, in our first ride, myself and Josh both found that the shifting performance of this group set was exceptional, and the feel through the shifter was great. It's a little bit more improved than the previous generation, which was perhaps a little bit light. This one's got a bit more click to it, but not as clicky as SRAM, and I really, really liked it. As you've come to expect, you get multi-release, so you can use your index finger or your thumb on the release, and there's a nice big paddle in there to shift through a load of gears. So, yeah, pretty nice. While we're at it, there's also a new chain. So, Hyperglide Plus, as we talked about with the cassette, means that the chain goes up and down the cassette a little bit nicer. Now, they've slightly redesigned the chain so that the inner plates of the narrow bit are more in contact with the narrow bits of the chain ring for less vibration, which they say is more efficient, and they also claim that the chain performs better at wider bend angles. So effectively, when you're in the extremes of the cassette, the chain doesn't run straight, and they reckon this new chain should be more efficient and more reliable when it's at either extreme. I'm not going to get it out because they're always really greasy, and I'm trying to keep my hands clean. There are 2 options for Shimano's brakes. There is a 2-piston XC lightweight brake. There's also a 4-piston trail/enduro brake, and that's what I'm going to be testing. So a quick look at the lever. You get your sort of I-spec mount, so you can, in theory, with the right adapters, you can mount your shifter on your lever. It looks relatively similar to the previous version, but there are some subtle differences. There's a real nice composite lever there with a bit of dotting on the end, so you've got a bit of grip. The other smart thing is to improve brake feel. Now, with a narrow clamp, which leaves the brake lever a little bit lighter, you sometimes get a bit of flex in the lever body. So instead of having a wider clamp with more weight, they've added this little support, which effectively sits on the bar. So when you're pulling hard on the lever, instead of flexing the whole lever around the clamp, this bit then pushes onto the bar, giving extra stiffness through the brake lever. And that's pretty smart, I reckon. Down at the caliper end, this is obviously a 4-pot design, and the pistons are slightly different diameters, and that's there to give you sort of better pad contact because the front ends up touching before the back, and it gives you also, in theory, better modulation. It's still quite a svelte looking caliper compared to some of the big ones, like I say, a SRAM code, but it's probably not trying to compete quite with the code you may be wanting Saints at that point. So a good, maybe enduro trail option there. We've also got Ice Tech pads, so they're thin to help keep the heat build-up as low as possible. Banjo on the back, now that's adjustable, so it should make routing the brake hose from the rear end of the bike a little bit easier. Sometimes if they're fixed, then it can make the hose routing a little bit trickier. So the final major bit of the puzzle probably is the disc brake rotors. Again, so we've got the Ice Tech, and if you know your Shimano Dura Ace road disc brakes, you'll remember these, and these are sort of the cooling fins for the rotor. Now Ice Tech is a 3-layered rotor design, so you get 2 outer layers at the same and then a slightly different material on the inner, and this is to help draw the heat away from the outer into the inner and then into these cooling pads to keep your brakes a little bit cool. Anyway, feel pretty light, and they key onto your center lock like that with a little locking bolt on there. Okay, we're nearly finished. Shimano did put in the box a neat looking chain device. Let's have a look at that. So this composite, so that's what, a unidirectional carbon fiber, I reckon, and a neat looking little chain guide. So that'll drop onto the upper mount or a high mount chain guide. Frame attachment. It looks like there's a little bit of adjustment in there for angles. It's quite smart. Weighs literally nothing. Like, I can't see a reason why you wouldn't put this on your bike. And finally, tool fiends. There's a proper 12-speed Shimano chain tool, and this feels nice and bulky. It looks like the pin's adjustable. You can drop your chain into there. This feels like a pretty smart bit of kit, which I've no doubt our workshop manager's going to try and steal, but I'm probably going to put in my pocket. So that is our unboxing of the new Shimano XTR 12-speed trail group set. There's probably some details that I've forgotten or omitted, but don't forget, in the description of this video are plenty of links to articles and other videos on XTR 12-speed. So what do you think? They've gone with a bigger cassette than SRAM. Do you think that's going to kill off XX1 and X01 Eagle? Or do you think their wireless Eagle group set, SRAM Access, is going to kill off XTR? Let us know in the comments. And in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe.